Thank you all for coming. The Tourism Development Commission meeting is taking place today, and we have a full agenda. So if we could start with a roll call, please.
Yes, Madam Chair. Chairperson Meinier.
Present.
Vice Chair Montgomery, absent. Commissioner Kisselberg.
Present.
Commissioner Alsbaugh.
Present.
Commissioner Thompson, absent. Commissioner Sobek.
Present.
Commissioner Marion, absent. Madam Chair, we have a quorum.
Wonderful, thank you. I'd like to take this moment to thank Jeannie. This is her last meeting with us. It's supposed to be May, but you're heading out of town, I think. So I want to thank you so much for your leadership here and helping me step up to the role. And it means so much to me. And I know there's so many people in the city that are grateful for your leadership. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. I really appreciate it. Gosh, thank you very much, everyone. I just want to take a minute to thank all of those that have come before the Tourism Development Commission with a proposal for an event or anything. We welcome you, and we are so grateful to have you come before our board and give us the information, give us insight to your event. I'm super grateful for that. I'm grateful to staff, Steve. I remember sitting in the office in the design center and having a meeting with you before all this transpired, just talking to you, just kind of getting ideas about where my next, where I will land again. And then I want to say thank you to Sherry Henry. Sherry Henry was a huge supporter for me and a huge proponent for tourism in this city. She was groundbreaking. She was epic. She was a woman. She was just wonderful. So with that said, I just want to thank her direction as well, and thank all of my fellow commissioners on the Tourism Development Commission as well. My 6 years here have been just so much growth, and for that I am immensely grateful. And just never, 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 never give up. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Madam Chair. Thank you so much.
And Commissioner Alsbaugh, on behalf of staff, we have a token of appreciation for your leadership here.
Thank you so much. This means so much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you. And thanks again. You're an amazing leader. We're going to go ahead and move on to the approval of minutes. Did anyone have any changes?
I move we approve.
I'll make a second on that.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, moving on to number 3, Montera Improvement Capital Funding Request. Presentation and commission discussion and possible recommendation regarding transferring tourism development fund savings up to $430,000 from capital project Scottsdale Sports Complex to fiscal year 2025-2026 proposed capital project Montera Improvements. The Montera Improvements project will also be funded with the Bureau of Reclamation funding of $400,000 for a project total of $830,000. Presenting today is Will Loftel of Westworld's General Manager. Welcome.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much for having me. As you mentioned, I'm Will Loftel. I represent Westworld, and I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to speak before you today. We're talking about Montera renovations, which Montera is a special event facility on the campus of Westworld. We are asking that you consider allocating $430,000 from the savings from the recent Scottsdale Sports Complex project PL01 and allocating that to the Montera Improvement Project. That, along with $400,000 that we've already received from the Bureau of Reclamation, will give us a little over $800,000 towards this project. Montera is a 12,000 square foot multi-purpose facility that's on the campus of Westworld. It has been in existence since the early 90s. It has been managed by third parties since the early 90s, and we, the city of Scottsdale, just recently took over the management of the facility. We are looking forward to running the facility for many years to come. But we are in the process of needing some improvements to the facility, as it is in excess of 30 years old. So that's why we're before you here today. Once renovated, Montera will be a fine addition to the portfolio of rental assets at Westworld. Currently, we have the North Hall, the Equidome, and the City Tent, each of which are approximately 120,000 square feet. That, along with the South Hall, gives us 400,000 square feet of event space. And with the Montera facility, that allows us a smaller facility that we can do ancillary events that support the events at the larger facilities, and also standalone events. Our target market will be holiday parties, corporate meetings, retreats, weddings, graduations, anything else that we can possibly put in there. It's a beautiful facility, and it's on a hill. It overlooks the area below, so it has a lot of attributes to us. From the financial perspective, we expect conservatively to book approximately 50 events there each year, which will bring in rental incomes of $125,000. We anticipate food and beverage revenues to be about $640,000. We receive 19% of all food and beverage revenues as our revenues, which would bring in approximately $120,000. So total, we're looking at $250,000 of revenues from this facility in the initial year. The renovation, assuming it's approved and we receive funding for it, will go in 2 phases. The first phase will be in the interior with banquet hall, bar area, east and west entries, conference room, and multi-use restrooms also getting a facelift. In addition to that, the support structure of the facility, the roof and the AC also needs some work as well. So that would be in phase 1. And phase 2 would be outdoor areas, the west patio, and the west entry parking. Phase 1 is on the screen there in blue, and the second phase is on the screen there in orange. So we're in the conceptual phase of this. We're working with DWL architects on trying to come up with the best path to renovate the facilities, but we're looking for a neutral, timeless, flexible design to create a clean base for guests to make their own. In other words, we want to try to create a facility that allows whoever's using that to make it their own, so that with lighting and decorations, they can put their stamp on the facility. We're looking at new doors that go from floor to ceiling, which would help the lighting at the facility. Also dimmable lighting. We'll also be upgrading the restrooms and potentially stained glass in the bar area. This right now is what the banquet hall looks like with the upgrades. We're anticipating to be looking something like that. So it's certainly a much improved area for events to call their own. And the bar area, this is what it currently looks like, and this is one of the concepts that we're considering that would be the final output. Restrooms, this is what they currently look like, and this is one concept of what they could look like once the renovation takes place. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you so much. Commissioners, I'll open it up to questions.
So you mentioned the food and beverage portion. Do you have an exclusive caterer, or is that dependent upon what the
M
group
Culinary
wants?
does the food and beverage services at Westworld, so they would be the food and beverage provider at Montera.
Thank you.
So you had mentioned phases, so phase 1 and phase 2.
Correct.
Is phase 2 going to be another financial ask, or are both of those phases included in this dollar amount?
We're trying to make it all work within this ask, but depending upon what the final costs come in at, we'll then determine what path we take. But certainly want to get everything in. What's really important to get done in phase 1, and then if we have more resources to apply towards the project, they'll work those towards phase 2.
Thank you. Any other questions? I will entertain a motion for this project at whatever level you like.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will certainly support a motion of funding the project at the $400,000 ask. And I motion that.
So the ask is 4:30?
4:30.
I beg your pardon. My apologies. 4:30. My apologies. I make a motion for 430,000.
I second that motion.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank
Yep.
you very much.
Can't wait to come see it. All right, moving on to number 4, fiscal year 2025-26 Tourism Development Fund budget. Presentation, commission discussion, and possible recommendation regarding the budget. Presenter is Trey Nails, budget analyst, senior? You don't look very senior.
Yeah, senior, AARP member.
Thank you.
Yes, Chair, members of the commission, thank you for having me today. As you just introduced, I'll be going over the proposed fiscal year 25-26 budget, just giving you some of the details of what's going on. I apologize in advance already. I'm a budget person, so you're going to have to get out your binoculars to see some of the finance font and some of the tables and things that are coming. But I also want to iterate along the way that a lot of the pieces, as I go through them, kind of build on each other, right? Forecasts into revenues, into expenditures. So along the way, if you have any questions or need any clarification, feel free to try and flag me down, and I can clarify there. That way we don't have to backtrack too much. Awesome. Okay. So just like I was saying, going over the agenda, first we'll start by kind of taking a look at the fiscal year 24-25 changes in terms of the forecast. When we go through and do forecast changes, we're really focused on some of the larger pieces, so we just want to highlight some of those larger forecasts that then end up driving the new fiscal year's budget. Then we'll move into the budgeted revenues for fiscal year 25-26, give you an idea of how we're coming up with those, where we're at, and some of the pieces that we'll continue to look at as we move into the next fiscal year. Then I'll highlight the budget requests that came through, and then I'll transition into sort of what's been approved, what the budgeted expenditures look like for fiscal year 25-26. And then the last piece will sort of be these budgeted transfers, which is sort of an expenditure piece, but it's really a transfer between funds or between capital and operating, that sort of thing. And then lastly, I'll just touch on some items to keep in mind as we move into next fiscal year, some of the things that we're still thinking about, and we kind of urge you to sort of think about as budgetary issues come up in the future. Okay, so starting with the fiscal year 24-25 forecasted budget and some of the notable changes that have come along. Obviously, the starting point for a lot of what we do with the tourism budget is really focused on the bed tax and the collections that we're seeing. And so as we're seeing preliminary tax receipts up to this point in the year, we started to do some forecast adjustments based on the percentages that we're seeing. The adopted budget had about $31.5 million in forecasted revenues. Since then, and based on kind of the trend we're seeing and taking a prior 3-year average of sort of what the remainder of the year looks like, we felt comfortable sort of adjusting that up to about $33.8 million as our forecast for the rest of the year. Now, obviously, that has implications on all the different percentage pieces and whatnot that come after it. So that kind of delves into some of the other pieces on this list as well. But as we're moving down the list, I wanted to highlight on this transfers in, this operating piece. This was due to sort of a strange mixture of sort of council actions that occurred related to $1 million that was given from the tourism budget to facilities to address the Loop 101 wall painting. It ended up that $1 million went out the door and then has been returned, and so you sort of see this in this transfers in piece, and so it sort of appears as a revenue, but I just wanted to highlight as that shows up as we look through financial statements and whatnot. Moving on to the expenditures piece, obviously the biggest piece that's going to shift up is the destination marketing contract at 45%, which is paid out based on actuals. And since we're forecasting the actuals to be higher for the bed tax, we're going to forecast that up as well. Similarly, and kind of dropping down to the bottom with the general fund transfer 12%, sort of the same principle happening there. And then you'll see that the transfers out for the CIP, you can sort of see that reciprocal piece of the transfers in as well, and that $1 million changing in forecast, sort of balancing things out. And then I do wanted to highlight just the net changes in sources over uses is a positive $662,354 right now. Again, that could be end up in fund balance or addressing budget overages if they were to occur with council approval on that appropriation. So sales tax forecasting, sort of moving into fiscal year 25, 26, or excuse me, looking at this year and sort of looking towards fiscal year 25, 26, we wanted to take a look at how we're sort of performing so far this year. And just to kind of give a rough overview, but as we were going through the beginning of the year, those first 4 months, there was a little bit of uncertainty. Typically we budget fairly conservatively, so we don't put ourselves in a bad position. But you can see by October, our year-to-date collections were actually below where we were budgeting by about $300,000. And so that kind of raised some concerns about, are the trends that we're seeing not as positive as we were hoping? But we've seen in the past couple months things start to really pick up as we got into event season. We really saw some outperformance from some previous years so far. And so we've been encouraged by that, and that's sort of been helping to sort of drive our future forecasts. And so you can see as of February, we were $2 million roughly above our budgeted forecast. And in some of our percentages in terms of the months, December outperformed by 47% above what we had budgeted. February performed 20% above what we had budgeted. And so that's kind of what helped us forecast up. But also, as we start moving into next year, thinking about where we should be proposing our bed tax collections. And so, again, sort of showing I think this is about 12 years here, looking back from fiscal year 2013-14 all the way up to our forecast, and then sort of looking at proposed. You can sort of see the trend and all the major events that have sort of happened along the way with responses to traveling from COVID and all that's occurred along the way. But we can sort of start to see after sort of the COVID spike that we sort of call it, we're starting to see this sort of flattening just in the trend, just sort of looking broadly at the data. And so as we sort of took that into mind, we really didn't want to be too aggressive and say, oh yeah, 5 years ago we had, I forget how much, but 50% jumps. We're not going to do anything too crazy. We're going to stick, largely conservative and sort of stick with this flattening. And then, the other pieces that we're considering on the economic side, right, and especially recently, we're just starting to see some changing consumer sentiment with what's happening in the economic markets, the stock markets, people's responses, and we don't know yet how that's sort of going to translate to tourism and whatnot. So again, sort of uncertainty there. Then there's also, some of the trends in available rooms, right? We're not seeing, massive spikes in the number of available rooms in Scottsdale. Obviously, we're not seeing a massive drop-off either. And part of that is, the trends in short-term rentals as well. That sort of balances things out. So there's no real driver there to say yes or no. And then the other piece, as I was sort of alluding to, is the post-COVID travel. We really don't know if that was sort of a flash in the pan and people are going to cool off, or if people say, well, travel's now a more important thing to me. I want to continue doing that in the future. And are we staying level? Are we trending down? Or do we continue the trend upward? So a lot of uncertainty on these pieces. And so just to highlight on the bed tax, we ended up forecasting about $33 million, which is about a $1.5 million jump over our adopted, but a little down from our forecast. And again, a little bit of that is in efforts to be sort of conservative in what we're forecasting, but also sort of trying to recognize the sort of economic situation that we're in and not leading us down a blind path too far. Also wanted to highlight some of the smaller revenues real quick that just can make up a little bit of a difference. So on the property rental side, really that's our Princess lease for the most part. We've seen actually really strong performance in that lease. And again, Princess has expressed interest in growing the number of units they have and their presence as well. So we felt comfortable sort of drawing up that proposed revenue amount by about $400,000 as we're seeing those positive gains. Interest earnings is also an interesting story. It kind of makes up a small part and really functions off of the fund balance that we have in the tourism fund. But interest earnings, it's been a little bit tough to tell with interest rates lately, but we are starting to see some small pullback on some of our interest rates that are out there. Again, the city luckily invests in a lot of long-term interest sort of securities and things like that. So that gives us some cushion there so that we don't see massive, ups and downs in that area. But we are starting to see a pullback, and so we've sort of forecasted about a $100,000 decrease in that area. But again, things could shift throughout the year, and we'll see where that ends up. So with that in mind, we kind of move into the budget request that sort of came through from the tourism department. So in terms of general fund requests, the singular request was related to the Scottsdale Arts financial participation agreement, and then a strategic plan for Scottsdale Arts as well. And that request was $393,000 roughly. And what that's really sort of being is sort of a placeholder for that financial participation agreement. I believe last year we saw about a 2.5% increase to that financial participation agreement. That is negotiated, I believe, in June, and I think that's the plan again this year. And so we don't know for sure what that amount will be, but just to sort of have a number in place, we sort of put roughly $292,000 there to sort of lock in, not lock in, I shouldn't say lock in, but kind of have a placeholder for that 2.5% increase to that financial participation agreement. And then there's also $100,000 for a Scottsdale Arts strategic plan, which has been long overdue. So this will be to help facilitate multiple portions of those public outreach and whatnot. Excuse me, I accidentally wrote transportation fund instead of tourism fund. It's been a long budget season, so no transportation dollars here, tourism fund dollars. So tourism fund, other commitment increase of $738,000 was an additional request. The major bulk of this is one-time items, specifically $600,000 for the Scottsdale Museum of the West. This was directed by council back in December of 2024, and it actually spreads over 2 years, so $600,000 in 25-26, $600,000 in 26-27 was the direction for that piece. We also have $75,000 scheduled for entertainment throughout Old Town during tourism season. That's been an increasing demand, and so placing in $75,000 for that entertainment. And then $63,000, this is also for one-time sort of wayfinding and signage that would be present in both Old Town and sort of the Civic Center Plaza, just to help guide tourists, but also to sort of align with some of the aesthetics that are more present here and sort of aligning those pieces. Also in the tourism fund, the internal destination marketing increase of $4.3 million. So the majority of this is sort of to align with Financial Policy 10 and sort of bringing those up to speed. Financial Policy 10 are those sort of percentage breakouts, the 45%, the 5%, the 9%, 12%, so on. And so this is to sort of bring that up to where we're sort of forecasting with the new tourism, bed tax revenues that we're expecting to come into play, and also just bringing us back up to speed on a lot of those pieces. But calling out some specific items, $316,000 is specifically for advertising and marketing. $190,000 is designated for Westworld marketing currently. $10,000 is designated for Scottsdale Stadium marketing currently. And then $200,000 is for regional event funding requests. And $75,000 is for sort of a Old Town matching marketing program. And then the last piece, and this is sort of a holdover from this year because it could occur this year, could occur next year, but this is sort of a change in technically a staffing increase. It's moving a position from our planning and development department over to tourism to sort of be an Old Town specialist FTE to help with some of the requests and outreach in that area. Again, that's planned to occur this fiscal year, but it may not happen by the end of this fiscal year, so we're sort of budgeting that in here and in that change. So moving ahead, just sort of trying to look at the bigger picture, and I should say, I'll go back real quick. On these budget requests, through the proposed budget, all of these have been approved at this time for inclusion in the proposed budget, and that will be what is taken forward at this time. But again, the budget expenditure is taking a look at sort of the whole, you can sort of see those increases to the 45% and the 5% that we expect in line with the bed tax increases. The administration and research, right, you can see the impacts there from just general increases to wages that we're factoring in, cost of living adjustments, those sorts of pieces. And then also event retention and development and other commitments. And that event retention and development, other commitments, those are kind of always the most broad areas. And so I know you already need your binoculars, but just to sort of break out even further sort of what's happening here, I wanted to give a little bit more of a breakdown of sort of what this looks like broken out. I won't go into every single piece, but you can see some of those one-time pieces that are in there that I mentioned earlier, and so on and so forth. I also want to highlight, if you're trying to do the calculations of 25%, that doesn't multiply out. Obviously, the 25% it includes also the revenues for the Princess lease, interest earnings, anything outside of the bed tax, and then the other commitments can also be used for capital items or transfers out as needed. So I will touch on those transfers out right now. So on the budgeted transfers, this is where we're really seeing the largest change from the adopted fiscal year 24-25 to the proposed 25-26. A lot of these capital items are sort of coming off the board. And as you guys just addressed with the Montera piece, right, we had some savings, for instance, in the Scottsdale Sports Complex. Now that's kind of coming off. But technically that is already transferred out to CIP, so we don't really need to do too much more action to sort of keep it going to the Montera item. And then you'll see items like McCormick-Stillman Railroad Park, right? That's actually seeing a decrease of $150,000. The Westworld Barns is the only sort of slight increase from the prior year's requested amount. Debt service remains roughly unchanged on some of our MPC bonds. And then in terms of transfers to other funds in the city and to support other operating areas, a lot of those are kind of being taken off the board to create a focus on really what specifically is more of a tourism drivers and what's sort of needed, and that's sort of a transition that's occurring with new leadership coming in and new ideas coming in. So you can see some of the major changes there, specifically some of the operational support for the Civic Center, Scottsdale Stadium, those kind of coming off the board. And then of course the 12% to general fund also just being modified to match. But you'll see in total, the transfers out has decreased by roughly $5 million, which really ends up helping the tourism fund balance at the end of the day, and really sort of reiterates a point of focusing as much as possible on direct tourism related items and making sure that there's as little ambiguity there as possible. So as I'll move in sort of the items to keep in mind as we move to the fiscal year 25-26 budget, but also with what we're sort of thinking about right now, right? Some of these I already kind of talked about, some of the economic uncertainty and things. I also talked about the financial participation agreement, right? We don't know necessarily where that's going to come out, and that could change at the end of the day. And then also new capital items. You know, for instance, just today, right, there's a new capital item on the board, needs to be addressed, right? The funds were already there, but sort of putting that into focus. And then the other item I kind of want to, you know, place here and just sort of in your minds is, you know, a lot of this was sort of developed starting back in October and moving through. And since October, the city's gone through a lot of, you know, undulations and changes during that time, right? We've had changes to the organizational structure, changes to leadership, changes to elected leadership as well. So there's new voices, and some ideas are from certain periods in time, some ideas are from, you know, more recent in time, and so that continued to sort of evolve this this budget as we went through. And so I just wanted you to keep that in mind, that we still have new voices, we'll still have new input, and our budget office's job is to be responsive to that and accommodate whoever we need to in order to align with whatever the voices tell us. So I just wanted to sort of highlight that along the way. And so I'll stop here. I know I've been rambling for a bit, but I'll open it up for any questions that you have or anything that I can dive deeper into.
Thank you so much, Troy. Great presentation. You're very good at this. So, and I appreciate it because I get numbers, but it's not my thing, so I appreciate you making it easy to understand. Commissioners, do you have any questions?
I have maybe an observation and an appreciation, perhaps. Slide 6, if we could just all look at that graph for a second.
Yes.
Okay, so 2019, everybody's giving high fives to each other on what a great year it was, and somehow we climb up to where 2022 ended up, which was a major pent-up spike. So I'm appreciative of your more conservative budgeting for 25 and 6, because you can see the trend isn't continuing up from 22 onward. So you said conservative, but it's also a little bit aggressive compared to the adopted budget. So there's a lot there, plus all the new stuff coming our way. So that probably wasn't an easy number to land on, I'm imagining.
Yeah, Chair, members of the commission. Yeah, it was definitely a challenge to sort of, throw the dart at the dartboard and try and hit the center of the bullseye. And, one of the things, as we sort of move forward, right, I mean, this was sort of made in a vacuum, trying to move, pretty quick this year with some changing voices. So as we move into future years, I think something that we really want to start looking a little bit more at is really hammering down on even some more direct of the variables, right? We tend to look at the big picture and sort of try and, follow the trend, but right, we also understand, right, some of these years, right, we had some really big events come along the way that are really going to drive tourism, and other years, again, we always have great events, but slightly less, drivers, and so really sort of hammering in, we were able to do that with, COVID in general, and saying, well, let's not hook our wagon to the COVID trend, right, and just say, up forever, but really sort of trying to sort of diminish how impactful that will be. And so maybe in the future, we'll start to look at more of those variables and really try and figure out where we are. But yeah, our hope is that our $33 million number will be a little conservative, but give us some room to play with and not really undersell us and not give options to work with the funds that are available.
Conservatively aggressive.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you.
I noticed a random line item that just had me curious. The STR program had an incredibly significant decrease. Do you know what that is?
Yeah, the short-term rental program, let me move to, the short-term rental program. So this is a few different pieces happening at the same time, and I'll try and kind of map it out, but this kind of is ignited with the vote on Prop 490, which is the park and preserve tax. With that approved, right, there was sort of a shift for police. Some of their officers, park rangers, that were funded by Prop 207, which are the Smart and Safe Arizona funds, which are sort of the marijuana revenue collections from that state proposition a few years back. That proposition says that that money goes to police and fire, but only for personnel. Nothing, no contractual, no commodities, no uniform, nothing, just for personnel. And so at the time, some of the park rangers were located there. They've now been shifted to these Prop 490 funds, and then that basically opened up Prop 207 to say, okay, what can that be used for? And so some of those short-term rental enforcement officers sort of fell into that and are able to be paid for out of Prop 207 funds. But that still doesn't mean that all of their commodities are covered, and so that's why at this point you have a really weird $8,800 left over because we didn't necessarily know or what the right place was for some of those commodities yet. And again, it's the short-term rental program, and that enforcement, of course, does still help, tourism and whatnot, but that might be addressed in the future. It might be kept as is, but it was kind of this result of, a bunch of pieces moving around, and then this is sort of the end image we were given on the puzzle. So I hope that explains it a little bit. It's complicated.
No, I appreciate it. I just was unsure, so thank you. Any other questions, commissioners? All right, so we are looking for a recommendation, I believe.
Yes, Madam Chair, Commissioners, if you will prefer to make a recommendation based on what's presented here, you can, or add comments related, as Trey mentioned, These numbers are going forward to the process, the Budget Commission, City Council. So if you'd like to make a recommendation, you can.
Would we like to make a recommendation?
I'll make a motion on the recommendation for the 25-26 budget.
A second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, up next, fiscal year 2025-26 city event funding programs, commission update, discussion, and possible recommendation regarding the event funding programs. Steve?
Yes, Madam Chair, Commissioners, thank you, first of all, for all your suggestions and comments in moving this forward. This annual process has always been very helpful for us to refine our programs and make sure we meet our objectives of putting heads in beds and marketing the destination. I think we've gotten there once again, and we'll be taking to City Council based on the recommendation here today by the Commission. In your packet, you've received some red lines, some additions, some subtractions, and what we presented in our 4 programs: the matching event, community event venue fee program, and the event development program. We've made changes to make them more consistent from a contractual perspective. We added elements that were brought forward here at the Commission, and I'll go over those highlights here. We had roughly about 5 changes I'll just cover regarding that. The first one, we added a charitable component to all our applications and worksheets based on comments from the Commission. Seasonality funding criteria period is now July through September. We tightened that up a bit, and we kind of brought in Longwoods related to their seasonality and how we look at that. So that we added that element. Events that have participated or are participating in the ME for community event funding programs are not eligible to apply for event development funds. Funding program, I should say. So what we're doing there, if you're in one of those 3 programs, you cannot make that jump up to the larger funding amount in that program. In terms of events that are ineligible, they're consistently the same, but we did add expos to the list, added that to that. And the next one came from our Parks Department, which is a very good addition. The event venue program funds will not be dispersed for fields that are reserved but not used to capacity as determined by Park and Recs Department. That was one of their inputs they provided to us. So based on these changes in addition, we've also included some information on how many events were funded and the amount. The one impact would be on the community event funding program related to seasonality. There are about 8 events who would be impacted by that particular criteria if we move forward with that. So we are looking for a recommendation to move these programs forward as presented here in the red line version.
All right, thank you so much. I know everybody's done a ton of work on this, so thank you for listening to all the comments, and I think there were some great additions made. So if we have any questions or if we'd like to move forward with a recommendation.
I recommend we adopt the streamlined effort put forth here.
I will second that motion, and I just want to make a quick comment with that motion. Thank you for putting the support of a charitable.
Charities, yeah.
Yep, exactly. Thank you very, very, very much, Steve.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you guys again. Lots of
you.
work. All right, Steve, don't go anywhere. Staff reports.
Yes, in terms of staff reports, as we talked about, we're going to provide information on a quarterly basis in terms of a presentation. But if there's any questions related to the Smith travel report, some of the bed tax collections, we can provide that. I know you had a lot of budget information here today, and the post-event report as well. That was included. We're coming to the end of our season here, so we have a few more events we need to add that information, but we're getting close to it. So if you have any questions or comment, we can address those.
Anyone have anything? No? All right.
Just one other item staff is looking at related to this CoStar Smith travel report. We're looking at maybe bringing some of that data down a little bit from some of our regional reports we get from that, trying to make it a little bit more concise, if you will. So we'll have more recommendations coming forward.
All right, we will move on to commissioners' reports. Anybody have anything to report?
I do not.
All right. You say you do or you do not?
I do not.
Okay. I attended the Hall of Fame dinner put on by the Chamber and sat at an amazing table, saw amazing people get inducted, which was very exciting. It's an event that is very close to me. I used to be a pretty big part of it, so it was great to be there. Did anybody else attend anything? All right. We'll move on to public comment. Steve?
No public comment.
All right, wonderful. Identification of future agenda items.
Yes, we're looking forward to scheduling some items in May and June coming forward. Experience Scottsdale will provide their business plan, strategic business plan at next month's meeting. The NCAA Final Four Women's Tournament will be bringing forward in May as well, the requests for funding for that. The 4th of July event related to our annual funding of that event will be coming forward. And we're going to get an update on canal convergence at next month's meeting. So those are a few items. And if you have any additional ones you'd like to hear, we can add those.
All right, I think that sounds good. Anybody have any additions? All right, well, I will go ahead and call for an adjournment. Would someone like to make a motion at their last meeting?
I would like to make a motion on the adjournment. Thank you.
I'll second the motion.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you all for
Thank you,
coming.
everybody. Thanks.
And we don't bite if you sit in the front row.